So, there was this court case recently that just absolutely sent shockwaves across social media. You probably saw it. It had it all: a terrible crime, a really surprising verdict, and a question that I think a lot of us were left asking. Today, we're going to dive into a philosophical response to all this that really challenges our basic ideas about blame, justice, and, well, how the world even works. This was the question Elon Musk tweeted, and man, it just perfectly captured how frustrated everyone was feeling. It's that cry for answers, right? A demand for a system that actually makes sense when something tragic happens. But here's the twist. What if the answer isn't about fixing the system we have, but about looking at the problem in a completely different way?
Okay, so here's the core of what happened. An individual who is found to be mentally impaired commits a murder. The court then rules they're not criminally responsible, so instead of prison, they're sentenced to psychiatric treatment. Now, legally, that's a defensible verdict, but for so many people, it just felt deeply, profoundly wrong, a real injustice.
And this really sets up the central conflict, doesn't it? It's the logic of the law clashing with this raw cry from the heart. You've got one side following legal rules, and the other feeling this deep moral and emotional outrage, which of course leads us to the fundamental question.
I mean, how do you find a solution that satisfies everybody? Is that even possible? The source material we're exploring today makes a pretty bold claim. To find a real answer, we have to step outside our entire framework of blame and punishment altogether.
And this is where the whole perspective gets, well, pretty radical. It's asking us to kind of suspend everything we think we know about crime and justice and just consider a totally different way of seeing things.
Just let that sink in for a second. No victims, no perpetrators. Now, from a human emotional point of view, that sounds impossible, maybe even offensive. But the source isn't talking about human laws here. It's talking about what it calls the law of nature. From this perspective, events aren't plays about good versus evil. They're just outcomes, effects that have to follow from a cause. The universe, in this philosophy, isn't some cosmic courtroom handing out justice. It's more like a giant machine that operates on pure, unbreakable cause and effect. And this chart really lays out the two mindsets so clearly. Our conventional view, the one we all live and breathe, is obsessed with blame. Who did it? Who's guilty? How do we punish them? But this natural law view asks a completely different set of questions. It asks, what's the reason this happened? What were the underlying causes? The goal isn't revenge, it's understanding. So, okay, that's a pretty abstract idea. How does it actually apply to our lives? How do we get from a place of blame to a place of cause? Well, the source uses a very common, very relatable example to make its point. To bring this down to earth, let's step away from the heavy stuff for a moment and think about something many of us have unfortunately experienced or at least worried about: getting scammed. It feels like a total violation, and your first reaction is just pure anger. So, imagine you get scammed. Your immediate reaction is to blame the scammer, right? But this philosophy argues that while punishing them might feel good for a minute, the real work is internal. The most important question becomes, what made me vulnerable to this? Was I being greedy? Was I desperate? Was I just not paying attention? Finding that internal reason, that's the only way to truly make sure it doesn't happen again. And this quote just brilliantly sums up the core belief. There are no accidents. Every single thing that happens, from a war to a simple scam, has a reason, a cause. The universe is this incredibly precise machine, and our job isn't to judge what it produces, but to try and understand how it works. This leads us to another really powerful idea: the purpose of hardship. If things don't just happen by accident, then why do we suffer? The source suggests we're thinking about suffering all wrong. Hardship isn't some penalty from the universe. It's a signal. Think of it like the check engine light on your car. It's telling you that something in the way you're living or thinking is out of sync with the laws of nature. It's a prompt to pull over and figure out what's actually wrong under the hood. So when that check engine light comes on, what do most of us do? We complain about it, we blame the car, we blame the mechanic, we might even kick the tire. According to this viewpoint, those are the worst possible responses. They're just pure emotion, and they totally block our ability to figure out the real problem, which pretty much guarantees we're going to break down again later. So the right response is to treat that hardship like it's data. It's your own personal study guide. The goal is to analyze it, trace it back to where it started, and find the lesson that you were meant to learn all along. Okay, so let's bring it all home. We're faced with this complex world,
full of events that seem random, unjust, and painful. What does this philosophy ultimately tell us to do? This might be the single most practical piece of advice in this entire philosophy. When you encounter something you just don't understand, a verdict, a tragedy, a personal setback, the first step isn't to form an opinion. It's not to assign blame or fire off an angry tweet. It's to be silent. Because that silence is the space where real inquiry, real research, and real understanding can finally begin.
The ultimate path laid out here is a journey. It's a journey from the heat of emotional judgment to the cool clarity of reason. It's about trying to see the world not just as a series of random things happening to us, but as one huge interconnected system that's governed by laws we can actually begin to understand.
And so we're left with this final big question to chew on. In our own lives, when things go wrong, which path do we tend to choose? Do we go for the easy satisfaction of blame, or do we take on the harder work of finding the lesson? What do you think truly moves us forward?